Oh, welcome back, kids, to Woods 2, where we're going to start with draftings 1, 2, and 3. Okay, it's probably been a while, unless you had Woods 1 last trimester, since you've done a drafting. So we're going to start almost from square one. Okay, I'll assume you remember what a tablet is, T-square, ruler, so forth, and that you break your tape out into 4 little chunks to tape your paper down once you get it good and square. Okay, so the first thing, get your T-square. Remember, put the T-square, move it over where you can see it, on your non-dominant hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm using my left hand. I want to keep it in snug, and I want to have my paper kind of near the center. Now, the way I'm set up with this camera, I have to have mine higher than I would like it, but it still works. Yeah, I want to watch this bottom edge. I want to get my head right above it and make sure I have that paper just dead on with that T-square, and that my T-square is tight against the tablet. That way we know our paper is good and square with our tablet. Now I'll go ahead and put the tape on. I don't want to get very far into the paper, and I want to rub basically out, not on the paper, and I want to make sure my tape is good and flat. Remember, if you put your tape very far in, you're going to run into problems with your border line hitting your tape. So you want to keep your tape on the outside. You really don't want to rub your finger on the paper or on the tape over the paper, then it will rip the paper when you pull it off. So just rub over the tablet. Okay, so the first thing we want to work on is the border lines going around the paper, and then the title block. If you remember right, and if you don't remember, flip to the second page of the packet, and you can see that the border lines should be a 1/2 inch in off the edge of the paper. Come down to number 2, the arrows are an open 30-degree arrow. Extension lines are a 1/2 inch long with a 1/4 inch gap. There is no freehand work in drafting. Little lettering in your title block should be all capital letters except for your name. So just remember those things, and we'll flip back to our drafting number 1. Okay, if you want to change this, you can. Instead of doing MVMS, you could do W for Woods, Roman numeral 2, P for class period, whatever class period you are, 4, 5, 6, 1 or 2, whichever class period. So Woods P dot class period. DR.1 stands for the drafting number. Don't write date, put the date. Like the day I'm doing it right now is 12/3/2001. Don't write name, put your name. Now, you just like the other page said, you can do your name however you want, just as long as I can read it. Okay. Now remember, these have run through a copy machine, so if you take a ruler and measure from the edge of the paper to the title block, it is probably not a 1/2 inch. Because every time those go through the copy machine, they're going to slide just a little bit one way or the other. Who knows where they're headed. But they'll be a tiny bit off. But you know it should be a 1/2 inch. So that's not a big deal. Now remember to do your measuring near the center of the paper. If you do your measuring, clear down at the bottom, reach, clear at the bottom, or clear up at the top, and your T-square is just a teeny bit off, or you are just a teeny bit off on squaring your paper up, by the time you get to the other side, you're going to be way off. So always do your measurements near the center of the paper, which makes sense for another reason. Most of your information is at the center of your paper. Okay, so let's do those measurements. This particular ruler of my wife's, the 0 is actually on the end of the ruler. If we look at this little clear ruler, the 0 is about 1/8 of an inch in off the edge of the ruler. So you need to look at your ruler and make sure which style you have. Because if you start on the end of the ruler with this one, you're going to be about 1/8 of an inch off on your measurements. So look at your equipment and see what you have. Okay, so I'm going to put a nice light little mark at 1/2 inch. That mark should be real light, and it should be drawn going away from your ruler, not along your ruler. Okay, if you do it along your ruler, it is very inaccurate. If you do a bubble, let's take for example, if you did a bubble, a tiny bubble, when you draw your line, you're going to still see that mark. You don't want that. You want your little mark to be straight in line where your line is going to be, so when you're done, you'll never see that there was a mark there. Okay, that's the best way to do it. A ruler will measure, you can use it going either direction. Like on this ruler, it's 18 inches on the end. I can come back to 17.5. That's still 1/2 inch. That's an easier, quicker way to do it than flipping your ruler over, but you can do it either way. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch down. Let's move this up so you can see it. You can see that we're on 8.5, so I'm going to go, it's actually just not quite on 8.5. So I'm going to go to the 8, make my mark. Let's see if I can adjust this camera a little bit better. Actually, adjust my tablet, and it will all fit onto the screen. Alright, so I want to take my T-square. Remember, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put the head of the T-square on the left. I like to hold the T-square like this. I put my little finger on the end, which I hold it in tight to the tablet. I put my thumb on this edge, index finger on that edge. I don't need to push down on the T-square. If I push down, it gets hard to move. So I just light pressure in, and I move it. Then I get where I want to go, and then I do push down, and I slide my fingers over to about the center of the paper, or wherever I'm going to draw, and I hold it down while I do my drawing. Okay? That helps to keep your T-square from moving on you when you're drawing your line. Alright, so we have our marks for our outside edges. Let's go to the top one first. I don't know exactly where it's going to start and where it's going to stop, but I'm going to draw it with a light construction line. For the sake of the movie, or the film, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to have to do a little bit darker. But you guys can draw yours nice and light so that you can erase your overhangs real easy. That is so much faster than trying to measure everything out exactly to begin with. I'm going to go down to the bottom. line up with my mark. Oop. Tape's catching me over on the edge. And I'll draw my bottom line. Now switch to the side. Let's try to adjust this tablet to get it all on the screen. There we go. T-square tight. We're good. Let's jump to the other side, line right up with my mark. I have my starting point, ending point. T-square's tight to the edge, held down. Draw from line to line. Now you should easily be able to erase those, and when you're done, you shouldn't be able to see them. That way Mr. Reinwald won't take any points off on your drawing. If he can see those, he's going to take points off. Now I did mine dark enough for the sake of the film so you could see. I can still see my overhang was there. That's not real good because I'll ding you on some points. Alright, so we have our border line all the way around now. The next thing we want to do is our title block. Okay? Which from the bottom to the very top is a 1/2 inch. And on the inside we have 2 guidelines. Okay, the distance, let me turn that sideways. It's kind of easier for me to work that way with it. Actually, this line is a tiny bit off. I know it is. It's a drawer error, apparently. From the very bottom to the bottom guideline is 1/8 of an inch. You always want to measure from the same place. So we always measure from the bottom to the top guideline is 3/8. From the bottom to the top of the title block is 1/2. So we're 1/8, 3/8, 1/2. Do not make the mistake of measuring the bottom one, coming and drawing it, then measure from the bottom one up to the next one, coming and measuring it, drawing it, then measuring from that one up. That is a way to definitely make mistakes. If you're off on one, then they're all going to be off. Okay, so I'll go kind of towards the center. I got to move this just a touch because the block holding the camera is in the way. So I'm going to put a mark at 1/8. What was our next one? 1/8, 3/8, and 1/2. So I can draw all 3 lines at one time. That's a lot quicker. Okay, best way I've found is keep your T-square on that edge with your little finger holding it. I like to set my pencil. Then you keep a light grip. Oh, I've got tape holding. That's a pain in the butt. Slide my T-square right up to it. We're tight on the edge. Hold it down. Got my starting point. I've got my ending point. Remember, keep your pencil straight and a slight slope at the direction you're pulling. Don't lay it over like this. A lot of kids want to do that. That's a mistake. Okay, let's go to our next one. Put your pencil right on it. Ease it up so it barely touches. Draw your line across. Same thing. Hold it down. Draw your line across. Okay, there we have our lines, our borderline, guidelines, and our top of our title block. The next thing we want to do is the division lines. We have 3 division lines to break this into 4 equal sections. Let's put our ruler on. If you line it up with your border line on the 0, you will see the first division line falls right on 2.5 inches. So they're each 2.5. 2.5 plus 2.5 equals 5. 5 plus 2.5 would be 7.5. So if you remember that, 2.5, 5, 7.5, that'll speed you up right there. Nice light little mark at 2.5. 5, 7.5. Alright, put your T-square on. I like to use, when I can, because I have that camera, that stand for it right in the way, I like to put my T-square tight, bring a triangle down nice and tight. Then I never have to move my T-square from that side. So I draw my division line, line up with the next mark, draw my division line, draw my division line. Okay, our title block is done except for the lettering. Alright, so let's go in. On this one, we can put Woods, instead of doing MVMS Woods 2, Roman numeral 2, we could do W2 P dot for class period and go from there. So line to line, nice and neat, take your time, Woods, or W, Roman numeral 2, P for class period, dot, whichever class period you're in, first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh, whichever one, you put it in there. Alright, DR.1 stands for drafting number 1. Make sure to put that in. Date, don't put date, write the date. Like today's date for me is 12/3/2001. Name, you can write your name however you want, just as long as I can read it so I can get you credit. Alright, so our border line is now done. Our title block is done. The next step is to locate the center of our drawing space. There's two ways you can measure and do it, but I like doing a easier non-math method. I use my T-square. I like to flip it over so this head doesn't catch on anything. Then I go opposite corner to opposite corner of my drawing space, which is above the title block and on the inside of the guideline, so it'd be this top corner. Do not draw a line the whole way. Just line it up with those spots. Now visualize if you had another straight edge going from the opposite two corners where they would cross, and draw a real light construction line, I don't know, about 2 inches long, just to make sure you hit the right spot, the center spot. Now go ahead and jump to those other corners and you make a tiny little line right in the center. Boom, you have your center. So we have the center of our drawing space. Now we need to find the center of our object. Okay, our dimension lines right here tell us exactly what it is, our dimensions. It's 2.5 inches wide, so we need to find half of that 2.5. I like to do it this way. What's half of 2? 1. What's half of a half? A quarter. So it would be 1 1/4. So you can put 1 1/4 inch, take your ruler, put it right in the center, put it down. Don't move your ruler. Mark 0, mark 2.5. So you just located both your sides. Okay? Just eyeballing that. That looks a little bit narrow to me. Let's double check to see if I did something wrong. Measure twice, cut once, and no, I did not. Okay, that's 4 inches high. So what's half of 4 inches? 2. So 2 goes in the center of the X. Mark 0. Mark 4. Now we just located the top and bottom of our drawing space. Looks like you can't see those marks. Let's try refocusing. That's good that you can't see the marks. You should see them on your drawing, just nice and light, but coming through the camera and everything, you can't see it. All right. Okay, now we've got our sides. Let's go ahead and start drawing in our lines. I like to cheat a little bit though. I've got these lines on this right side, which are called extension lines. And they're just dead straight in line with our top and our bottom. We've got them on the bottom over here too. And they are just straight in line. So I like to draw them right at the same time. So I line up. I'm going to use the bottom of my T-square so I can see. And I see my side mark right here, so I want to make sure I'm just a little bit past. It's better than pulling up short. So I want to make sure I'm a little bit past. Draw my line. And I'm going to hang it long on that right side where our extension lines are. Going to do the same thing on the bottom. Line up, make sure I'm just past my side mark, not much. And I'm going to hang them long on that right side. You drew them extremely lightly, so it's not a big deal to erase, just a couple of seconds. All right, next thing, we're going to do our sides. And again, my triangle will work that way. Okay, again, we're going to cheat and come straight down so we can get our extension lines down here. The top, I don't need to overhang. On the top, I know right exactly where it is. I'm going to cheat just a tiny bit more. I'm going to leave a little bit of a space there so that when I come in to erase, I'm not going to be erasing right up tight on this line. So I'm going to leave a little bit of space when I draw these lines. Just make life a little easier on myself. Oop, I moved it. Okay, not a big deal. I'll just reline up, make sure my pencil, leave a little space, draw a line down. Do the same thing over here. Line up with my mark. Don't start at the center and go two ways. You're trying to put two line segments together, and you can almost always see that when you're done, that you did two segments. Okay, draw my line, leave a little bit of a gap, come on down. Alright, so now I've got my layout. I've just got to measure for my gap and my line. My gap and line. If you remember right from the second page, the extensions lines are a 1/2 inch long with a 1/4 inch gap. So our gap is a 1/4 inch and our line is a 1/2 inch long. Okay, if you want to do a little bit of math, makes life easier. Okay, you're starting, your gap is a 1/4 inch, so your line is going to start on a 1/4 inch. Then it's 1/2 inch long. So 1/4 inch plus a 1/2 would be 3/4. So your starting point is on 1/4 or 1/4, and it ends at 3/4. And your dimension line is in the very center of that. So let's mark a 1/4. That's where our line's going to start. and let's mark 3/4. That's where your line is going to end. Okay, so we have that point and that point. While we're right here, let's go ahead and mark where our dimension line is going to hit. And it hits right in the center of that line. And I will tell you, well, there's a 1/4 inch and there's a 1/4 inch, so 1/4 and a 1/4 would equal a 1/2 inch. So this dimension line falls right on a 1/2 inch where your ruler is sitting right now. So when you're marking things out, mark a 1/4, a 1/2, and 3/4. Let's come down to the bottom. Tiny, tiny little marks. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. Now we can go in and erase where your gap is. Erase your overhang on the outside. Okay, for the sake of the video, I'll keep moving. Come back later and clean that up. Okay, got my gap. Erase right up to that, and erase our overhang. I'll get the rest of that overhang later, but let's keep this video moving. Alright, now we're going to do the same exact thing on the bottom. Okay, a 1/4 inch, that's our gap, plus the start of the line. Then we're going to mark a 1/4, a 1/2 inch for our dimension line, and 3/4. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. I can measure off of any mark. I'm starting on 6. So I'm going 6 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. An inch is an inch is an inch. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's erase right to that 1/4 inch mark. Let's erase right up to that 3/4. 1/4, right up to 3/4. There's our lines. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hit those real quick, just so they're done and out of the way. Alright, now we want to put in our dimension lines, which are these lines right here. So, and they come off of that center mark on our extension line. So I'm going to line up, make sure my pencil. Now notice there's a space there for our numbers. There's a space there for our numbers, and they line up right with our center X. Right in the center where our X is. Okay, so here's how I cheat the system. I've got it all lined up for it. I put my little pinky line it right up visually with that X. I draw my line to my pinky, jump over it, draw it on. There's my space for my number. I'm going to do the same thing on the side. Pinky sometimes is a little bit awkward doing it on the side. Let's see if it's going to be awkward this time. We're lined up. I'm going to use my, what the heck, I'll go with my pinky. It's still not that awkward. And on down we go. So now we have our division lines on there. Next, we'll jump to arrows. Okay, if you remember right from the information page, your arrows are an open 30-degree arrow. So let's jump back to our drawing. And we'll draw an open 30-degree arrow. We had this triangle that I've been using to draw some straight lines. Now we're going to use it to draw our arrows. If you look at this arrow and that arrow, they're on a different angle, aren't they? But I said they're 30s. they're 30 degrees away from your dimension line. So it's 30 degrees away from our dimension line. Okay, the easiest way to explain that to kids is put your T-square tight on your tablet, put it parallel with your dimension line. Then with your T-square tight to your, your triangle tight to your T-square, you have a 30-degree angle and a 60. Your shallow angle is your 30, your steep angle is your 60. If you flip it over this way, you've got a 30 and a 90. Okay? Doesn't matter which side, just as long as you have that 30. I put my pencil right in that intersection, draw back visually about 3/16 of an inch. I like to do both arrows at the same time. So I put my pencil right on that intersection and I draw down the same visual distance at 3/16. Okay, so I have half of this arrow done and half of this arrow done. Now I'm going to take and roll my triangle over, double check my T-square, make sure it's tight to the edge, put the pencil right on the intersection, draw my line back, slide over, put my pencil right on the intersection, ease it right up to it, draw the line down at the same distance. Okay, now if we took this up just like I had mentioned and did that arrow, it would be on the wrong angle. Okay, the way to do the sides, we need to put our T-square again parallel with the dimension line. This is the easiest way to tell kids. And line it up. Pencil on the intersection, draw back about 3/16. T-square tight, triangle tight. Always keep checking that. Do the other. So you have half done, half done. Take your triangle, roll it over, do the other halves. T-square tight, triangle tight. Pencil on the intersection, ease it up to it. Draw back visually the same distance. Same routine. Boom. There we are. We have our arrows. So they're 30 degrees away from the dimension lines. And now you've got your gap. You can put in your numbers. Put them right center, 2.5 inches, 4 inches. Now the rest of the paper is erasing overhangs, cleaning it up, then darkening your lines. Now remember, when you're darkening your lines, you really want to be careful and make sure you don't get double lines. So this is, I don't know if this is technically correct, but I actually like to keep my pencil and I push into the point so I can watch that point. And you can cheat you can cheat just a little bit. If your line starts, mine's right on the money right now. It's right on. But if that's just a teeny bit off of your T-square, not very much, if it's just a teeny bit, you can actually adjust the angle as long as you do it smoothly and make sure that pencil stays right on that line. But if you're very far off at all, it won't work. Mine is right on the money because I've done it on this one taping. So I still like to kind of push in, but I can watch to make sure that pencil stays dead on that line all the way across. So when you're done, your line should look dark, sharp, and crisp. See, my pencil point is still pretty sharp. I actually should probably sharpen it again. But on my paper here, probably my best line is right here. Looks pretty dang good. Right here looks good. And this here looks good. Those are probably my best lines. Dark, sharp, and crisp. Alright, so you want to finish out your lettering, erase everything, clean everything up, darken it. I recommend you go over your name in ink. The purpose of that is so no one can grab it out of a tray, erase your name, and put their name on it. Okay, so I recommend ink. I think you can handle it from here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.